Chapter 18. 2. Omega@aruff.net. Mail to omega@aru.com. From oracle0101011010@gmail.com. Mail to oracle0101011010@gmail.com. Subject: Your offer. Omega: I'm in. And I have information for you. Oracle: 21 months ago. Xochitl stood in the middle of Memo's chop shop, staring at the gold rooster. Keychain in her hand. 8 weeks had passed since her near-death experience at El Gallo's warehouse, and the cops still hadn't found this garage. Got to hand it to him, the man knows how to cover his tracks. The past several weeks were a blur to Xochitl. She had woken up in the hospital, having suffered a ruptured spleen, 3 cracked ribs and contusions to her eye, face and legs. All compliments of Memo in that Cabron Tootie. But the worst wounds she'd received were the bites to her right shoulder and forearm, both of which still experienced shooting pains regularly. The doctor had told her the nerves were regenerating, that the healing process could take up to a year, sometimes more. Xochitl knew it would take much longer to get over the night her baby brother almost took her life. Miguel, where are you? Xochitl sighed. She'd spent 2 agonizing weeks in the hospital. The cops who had taken Xochitl's statement would not tell her what had happened to Miguel. She'd requested to speak to Officer Lowell but had been denied access to her. Even Captain Birch, whom Xochitl had called after her release, didn't know where Miguel and the other Werebeasts were being detained. Anita and her sister Giselle, with whom Xochitl had been living while recuperating, told her stories about squads of officers snatching up the afflicted from their homes, schools and work, never to be seen again. Of course, the stories usually followed one of their benders. Xochitl had brushed them off as drunken exaggerations until the night she had come out of her room for a glass of water and had found Anita, sober, lying on the couch, cradling Miguel's baby picture. Anita had looked so frail, vulnerable, the pain in her eyes unmistakable. Without a doubt, Anita was a horrible mother. But in that quiet moment, Xochitl had witnessed Anita's love for her son. Not knowing what's happened to Miguel is killing her too. For days, Xochitl had spent hours being shuffled from one department to another until she'd reached Captain Birch. She'd accused Birch and his cops of kidnapping people from the neighborhood, fully expecting his denial. Xochitl had been shocked when Birch had told her that the squads were real military and not under his control. He had sounded sorrowful, dejected, having clearly been shut out too. Xochitl pitied the man. He's a good cop. Pain shot through Xochitl's arm, jolting her from her thoughts. She dropped the keys and clutched her throbbing limb. She sucked in a breath and waited for the stabbing sensation to subside. Hi, Joel. That was a bad one. She shook out her hand. Her ribs still bruised and tender, she bent down, exhaling slowly and picked up the rooster keychain. Always athletic, Xochitl was frustrated by her inhibited movement. Be patient. Give it time to heal, the doctor had said. But Xochitl was running out of time to find Miguel. The cops were no help. She had exhausted all conventional avenues. Papa always said, Mija, if you ever need help, go to mis hermanos, the Marines. And that was exactly what she intended to do. Xochitl took out her burner phone, flipped it open and dialed the one man who would never let her down. Uncle Vern. Xochitl? Baby girl. Are you all right? Xochitl's eyes welled up with tears. Hearing the voice of her papa's best friend, Colonel Vernon Jones, retired. I'm okay. You know, a few broken bones won't stop a Magaña. I swear, if I ever see that Memo Morales again, I'm gonna rip his heart out and feed it to him. I'll help. Xochitl waited for her uncle to laugh, but there was only silence. Vern? You there? I'm so sorry. I couldn't come see you in the hospital. An anguished grunt divulged the guilt he couldn't verbalize. It's okay, Xochitl said sincerely. No, it's not. It's just this Werebeast thing. Vern sighed sharply. Well, it's FUBAR. Until last week, the base was on lockdown. Wait, base? You're not at your cabin at Arrowhead. Not for 2 months now. Military's invoked stop loss. My retirement's on indefinite hold. They can't do that, can they? Xochitl, we're in the middle of a crisis. Washington doesn't know what the hell to do, so they call on us devil dogs. Aura. Xochitl tried to mimic her uncle's bravado, but even she could hear her fatigue. Xochitl Magaña, I know you. What's going on? You mean besides LA being infested with werewolves? Besides that, yes. You didn't call just to catch up. No. I'm kinda having a crisis of my own. Xochitl tried to collect her thoughts. What do you know about military squads rounding up the afflicted? Not much. Just that they're going in whenever there's a report of someone turning and taking care of the situation. Why? Miguel. Xochitl's throat tightened as she attempted to explain that her brother was one of the beast creatures. What about Miguel? Is he okay? Is he in trouble? He's a werewolf Werebeast. Whatever they're called. He's one of them. What do you mean he's one of them? Anita never said. You called La Borracona? How did that go for you? It didn't, Vern admitted. What happened? After the raid, they took Miguel away. La Chota. They took him away. I can't find him. No one will help me. I don't know what to do. The realization that she felt utterly alone slammed into Zoki like a Mack truck. She began to sob. Calmate, Mija. Zoki focused on her uncle's soothing voice and slowed her breathing, calming herself. Vern had always been a source of strength for Zoki, especially after her father's death. He knew how to talk to her, make her feel safe. Can you help me, Uncle Vern? Of course, baby girl. I've still got a few colleagues in DC who owe me a favor or two. I'll make some calls. Can you get here? Yeah, I'm leaving now. Xochitl leaned on the garage counter and stared at the draped behemoth parked across from her. I'll see you in a few hours. Okay. See you soon. The call disconnected. Xochitl flipped the receiver back down and walked to the rear of the car. You ready for a road trip? She pulled off the tarp with a snap and marveled at the bright orange 1966 Oldsmobile Tornado, shining like new Memo's pride. Enjoy. The license plate read El Gallo. Chapter 19. If you have reason to believe your hound is ill or injured, you must stay calm. A sick hound may not exhibit outward signs but may mask or hide symptoms. Loss of focus, excessive pacing, and lethargy could be clues to underlying issues. Monitor your hound's intake of fluids and output of waste. A sick hound may have trouble controlling normal bowel movements even if usually house-trained. There is always a reason for behavioral changes in your hound. Hounds are creatures of routine and habit. If a hound starts acting different than usual, you must investigate. If your hound has been injured, caution is imperative. A hurt hound may have difficulty controlling the bite instinct. Approach your injured hound with caution and call your doctor immediately. On that note, it is crucial you establish a rapport with a trusted physician before a time of crisis. Many health insurance companies offer lists of health care providers qualified to treat hounds. Your vet is not the right choice for your hound. Please be aware that as of this printing, health insurance companies do not recognize your hound as a dependent. You must purchase separate hound healthcare. Please note, ferals are automatically disqualified from any insurance plan. Be sure to get hound certification when signing up for any hound health insurance. For certification rates, please visit our website, www.werewolfwhisperer.com, http://www.werewolfwhisperer.com. Excerpt from Hounds and Ferals and Werebeasts. Oh My! By Lucy Lowell, The Werewolf Whisperer. Sunrise was still nearly an hour away when Lucy drove El Gallo through the quiet, shadowed town of Empyrean. The rain had let up and Lucy briefly felt at peace. She'd been gone for almost 2 years, but Empyrean hadn't changed. The old general store was still nestled between the Empyrean library and the hardware store. Molly's Friendly Diner still sat at the corner of Main and Maple, and the high school still dominated the west side. The pride of the family-friendly town, Empyrean High sat at the center of well-kept grounds stretching into football and baseball fields as well as large areas dedicated to farming and animal husbandry programs. As Lucy put El Gallo on the winding mountain road toward the ranch, she glanced at Xochitl curled up under Lefty's military jacket. She wondered what Xochitl would think of her idyllic hometown. After having been gone for so long, even Lucy looked at Empyrean through different eyes. Returning home with a trunk full of guns and a legal Chinese hound, if that's what Kai is, and a catalog of questionable though arguably necessary accomplishments, she felt dirty and out of place. Am I so fucked up I don't even belong here anymore? Empyrean was something out of a storybook, Lucy realized. The small town nestled at the foot of the Tehachapi Mountains, had been virtually untouched by the troubles of the outside world until now. El Gallo managed the first sharp turn up the mountain with little difficulty, though the unpaved road to the ranch was still muddy from the late-night rain shower. A lack of road keeps solicitors away, Mama had always said. If someone really wants to come see us, they won't mind the rugged climb. Lucy suspected her mama preferred spending her money on rescue dogs instead of wasting it on road improvement. As they slowly snaked upward, the breathtaking skyline views were still hidden by darkness, and Lucy chose to let Xochitl and Kai stay comatose just a little while longer. All the running around, followed by the rumbling freeway miles flying by, had been an effective lullaby for their new companion. As for Xochitl, the last 36 hours had netted a boatload of sweat, pain, and aggravation, but no sleep. Lucy had been relieved when her friend finally gave in and turned the will over after they'd stopped for fast food tacos. Lucy was even more relieved that their destination was only minutes away. She was starting to feel the effects of the infection that was undoubtedly spreading through the leg Travis had slashed. She'd have to have it looked at when she got home. A fleeting touch of amorphous pain smashed around the inside of her head, temporarily blotting out the sharp physical pain radiating from her leg. The other cuts, scratches, and bruises clamored for attention as well. She tried to ignore them. Lucy's eyelids drifted closed again from the stupefying fatigue, and she cracked the window to let the brisk pre-dawn air revive her. Struggling hard against the advancing days, she inhaled deeply. The wood and earth fragrance from the outside briefly overpowered and then infused El Gallo's smell of old leather and muscle car exhaust. Home. A sudden fever rushed through Lucy's body. Sweat trickled from her pores and alternated with a clammy chill that made her teeth chatter and her jaw hurt. She hoped she could make the last mile without any problems. Pulling over to pass out on the driveway would be totally lame. Lucy's consciousness raced and connected memory and emotion in abrupt bursts. Detached from linear thought, she grasped that El Gallo's unique scent and the purr of his powerful engine oddly signified her freedom. Even as their car rushed ever closer to Hannah's, Lucy understood that she was letting go of the ranch as her home. As much as Lucy loved Hannah, Hannah couldn't replace Mama. And Mama was gone. Traveling the road to help folks adjust to the disaster of the war plague was how Lucy had survived after Mama. This car, Xochitl, and possibly this peculiar rescue were what she recognized as the contents of her heart. As her head nodded in silent acknowledgement of the thought, she felt the strong urge to turn the car around and drive far, far away. The AM Classic Country station had cycled back to Johnny Cash while Lucy was caught up in her reverie. "I will let you down." Lucy quietly repeated the lyrics and peered past the beacon El Gallo's headlights projected on the road. She watched as the ranch's gray-shingled roof and white-gabled dormers came into view. The structure had more mass than Lucy remembered. "What have I become?" The song's words seemed to indict Lucy. "What have I become?" she repeated and switched off the music. The memory of the man forcing her to the ground flashed through Lucy. The encounter with the Vijay boys had been more than just a fight, she thought with disgust. She had never seen such fanatical hatred toward Hounds, such vehemence against her personally, and such casual, cold-blooded evil. She'd seen horrible things working for the LAPD, but the Vijay boys had taught her a final, terrible lesson about people and about herself. But if she was honest with herself here alone in the darkness, she had to admit that she had been feeling something malevolent rushing toward them for some time. She promised herself to explore Kyon Nose, to follow up on Bob's stolen lab results, and to thoroughly investigate Kai's astonishing talents. As she pulled El Gallo onto the gravel driveway, Lucy could see Hannah standing on the lit-up porch. Lucy would have recognized Hannah anywhere, no matter how much time had passed. Hannah's strong, thin stature, now clad in jeans and a pale fisherman's sweater, hadn't changed since Lucy was a child. Hannah had wrapped a brown and red saddle blanket around her shoulders and was coaxing her long jet-black curls into a thick braid. Jerry and Rana, still the most punctual of ranch hands, were walking toward the kennels, which looked much larger and built out than Lucy remembered. Both women waved but didn't turn back. Lucy guessed they thought El Gallo had brought boarders. Had they known it was her, Jerry and Rana would have come running. Lucy parked El Gallo in the little lot by the weeping willow. She paused a moment before turning off the ignition. She felt nauseated and dizzy but couldn't delay her homecoming any longer. "We're home," Lucy said, waking Xochitl and Kai. "Take the key." She handed the rooster keychain back to Xochitl, who grabbed at it in slow motion. The black eye Xochitl had given herself in the container yard was reaching down the side of her face like a blue Celtic knot tattoo gone wrong. Lucy opened her car door holding Kai, who was climbing up the seat and nearly over her shoulder back with one arm. "Stay," she told the boy. He let out an annoyed whine and flung himself back into his seat. "Just a minute," Lucy said, trying to appease him. "Let's give Hannah a chance to say hello before you run around the property like a wild banshee." "Bed. Sleep." Xochitl stumbled out of the passenger side door and held onto El Gallo to keep from losing her balance. She rested her head on her hands and peeked at the house through half-closed eyes. "Hi, Hannah." "Lucy." Hannah came flying down the driveway, followed closely by a pack of 7 dogs. The giant Bernese mountain dog Chassela's little Poppy, the German Shepherd Bon, and Ellie's chocolate labs Briscoe and Maggie were all familiar to Lucy. The gorgeous Rhodesian Ridgeback puppies were new. Lucy took a few steps toward them. Without hesitation, Hannah threw her arms around Lucy and held her in the tightest grip imaginable. Lucy's vision blurred and she felt her balance slipping away. Lucy hugged Hannah a second longer than necessary, fighting to stay upright without giving herself away. The dog circled around them with tremendous energy, yipping and bumping into Lucy. "Lucy! Lucy! Lucy!" Hannah kissed Lucy's cheeks and then wiped away her own tears. Overwhelmed, Lucy stepped back and ran her hands over her face and through her hair. "You're finally home," Hannah said and reached out to gently tuck a stray strand of Lucy's red hair behind her ear. "You must be dead tired and starving. Let's get you taken care of." "Yeah," Lucy said. "The last couple of days have been tough on Xochitl and me. And now we have this hound or something." "What hound?" Hannah's head turned to Xochitl. Xochitl gave her a little wave with her fingers. "Kai," Lucy called the boy. Hearing his name, Kai nearly flew out of the car, a flood of animated Chinese words escaping his lips, and briefly bounced to a halt next to Hannah, who staggered back. The pack of dogs brayed in astonishment, and Kai joined in with a keyed-up howl. The giant Chasselas put his 2 enormous paws on Kai's shoulders and licked his face. Kai laughed out loud and the chase was on, before Lucy or Hannah could stop them. The dogs and Kai circled the car at breakneck speeds, howling and barking with excitement. Lucy couldn't tell if the pack was chasing Kai or if Kai was chasing the pack. "What in the green hells is going on?" Hannah transitioned abruptly from the kind smile to a livid grimace. Hannah had never liked surprises. "I just wanted a nice reunion. You." She pointed at Xochitl impatiently. "You brought chaos to this house. Get your hound under control." Xochitl snickered. Kai sighed. Lucy spoke gently and pointed to the ground beside her. As if pulled by a rope, Kai settled himself beside Lucy and grinned over at Hannah, who was having trouble gathering her dogs. "Hey Hannah, looks like you have everything completely under control." Xochitl scoffed and leaned against the hood of the car. "Jerry and Rana," Hannah called over to her helpers. "Say hi to Lucy and then put the puppies in the kennel." Hannah tried to collect her dignity while the thin dog Poppy snuffled at Lucy's hurt leg, bumping her and whining softly. "Rhodesian Ridgeback pups," Hannah explained. "Boy and girl. They are going to be huge." "Sweet." Lucy picked up the wiggling girl puppy and kissed the top of her head. The effort gave Lucy a head rush, and she quickly had to set the little animal back on the ground. Having already dashed over from the kennels to help, Jerry and Rana gave Lucy hurried hugs, promised to catch up, waved to Xochitl and on Hannah's insistence, carried the 2 large puppies back to the house. Dark puppy eyes looked longingly back at the pack, but Hannah would not lift their banishment. "Bye, Peritos." Xochitl watched the 2 helpers lug the pups up the stairs. "Must be nice having all that help around here. Of course you are really good at getting other people to do your dirty work, Hannah." Lucy understood Xochitl's good-natured teasing, but she had the feeling Hannah would detect only an edge. Not wanting any part of the unavoidable confrontation, Lucy bent down, put her arm around Kai, raked her fingers through Bon's thick coat and then petted Poppy's snout. Hannah tugged on her braid and looked down at Lucy and Kai. After a moment she raised her eyes to Xochitl as if studying her. You think you know everything, don't you? She delivered the question to Xochitl aggressively, even taking a quick step toward Lucy's friend. You two rocket scientists had quite the night actually, Hannah said bitterly. Worried, Lucy stood up too fast, and her head started swimming. We just got here, Bruja. Xochitl jumped in indifferently before Lucy could speak. What are you all up in our shit for? Listen, Manita, Hannah said and glared at Xochitl. Your little stunt with the horse trailer has gotten over 1 million hits since 11 o'clock last night. You're a web sensation. Congratulations. Hannah folded her arms in front of her. Lucy was taken aback. Did that Todd boy post a video of us subduing Travis at the gas station? That would be bad. Lucy's eyes slowly drifted to Xochitl, who looked like she was about to charge Hannah. Bad. Yeah, real bad. Xochitl wasn't done. You know what else is bad? She waited for Lucy to respond. I don't know. What else is bad? Lucy wasn't sure where this was going and her head pounded. The dizziness returned even stronger, and she rested her hand on Chancellor's strong shoulder. The labs Briscoe and Maggie flanked her, pushing Kai slightly back. Let's see. Xochitl seemed to consider. I define 2 guys with bats. Jackass with a lead pipe and a twisted motherfucker with a machete trying to kill us as bad. Yeah, that was bad, Lucy agreed wobbly. Hannah stood still and stayed silent. In the last 36 hours we did a lot of running, Xochitl continued, her words sounding far away and vaguely underwater to Lucy. We chased a couple of teenage werebeasts through a canyon in the dark. I fell into a patch of poison oak. Lucy got her leg clawed open. I shot a feral girl who was dying of mange. We took a helicopter ride with 2 pissed-off mercs. We spent 3 hours crawling a fuckton of miles around never-ending construction. We dealt with a rampaging beast in a horse trailer at a truck stop and a broken axle on set trailer. We were cradled between 2 18-wheelers avoiding Smokey Bear. We crated my friend's son, loaded him onto a boat named Sharon and sent him off to become Lord of the Werebeasts or die. And for the privilege we paid a Tolstoy mofo crusty ship captain an ass and a half of dough. Xochitl took a breath, but Lucy didn't interrupt. She could tell Xochitl was just getting started. Then we had to listen to a security guard as old as dirt advise us to leave our guns in the car while we go hound hunting because guns are dangerous. You know what I find dangerous, Lucy? Lucy felt a sway start in her shoulders, and her knees had a distinct, gushy pudding quality to them. I don't know, Lucy said, unsure of what Xochitl was talking about. What do you find dangerous, Xochitl? Lucy was distracted by the birdsong from the trees. She smiled thinking about how many types of birds there were in the world. I find running into a crazy-ass team of catchers dangerous. Running into them. Not once but twice in one night. I find double dog dare dangerous. Aha, Lucy said. Blue jays are blue, you know. And not only that. Xochitl ignored her and took a step toward Hannah. My night wasn't complete until I ran down a hecka-fast super hound, smashed my face into a steel storage container, got rained on, and last but not least was nearly massacred by a cabal of pinch worm-murdering vigilantes. Lucy said empathetically. I fought my admirers off with only one knife. One knife. Xochitl sounded self-satisfied. Couldn't use the other one because some stupid Highlander wannabe got in a lucky shot. Hurts like a mother. Pissed me off to no end. Lucy turned to puzzle out Hannah's reaction from the look on her face because the words coming out of Hannah's mouth in response to Xochitl's tirade sounded like the cacophonous sounds of a rusty trombone. But something went wrong. Instead getting a better look at Hannah, Lucy got a better look at the gravel. She saw a large dog tongue coming at her. She meant to say, "It's okay, Poppy." But the words jumbled in her mouth, and then there was darkness. Kai howled and ran circles around the 3 women. Out of the corner of her eye, Xochitl saw Lucy sway, then hit the ground with a thud. Lucy! Xochitl rushed to Lucy's side and turned her on her back. Quiet! Hannah growled. Kai ignored her and continued his keening. Lucy's eyes were rolled in the back of her head, and her skin appeared sallow. She felt warm to the touch. Blood and pus seeped through her sweatpants where Travis had clawed her. Kai crouched next to Xochitl and sniffed Lucy's leg. As if he'd smelled rancid meat, he reeled away and bellowed in alarm. She's burning up. Xochitl wiped away the sweat beading on Lucy's forehead with her sleeve. Hannah had started to kneel across from Xochitl when Kai jumped atop Lucy, straddling her protectively. He growled low, threatening Hannah. Hannah took a step back. Kai. Xochitl placed a cautious hand on Kai's arm. It's okay, boy. She pointed up to Hannah. Lucy's family. Kai looked at Lucy, then at Xochitl and whimpered. That's right. Xochitl, trying to emulate Lucy, used her best calming voice. Kai moved off Lucy and squatted next to Xochitl. Good boy. She patted Kai on the back. Nice job. Kai smiled and nudged her with his shoulder. Impressive. Hannah, still keeping an eye on Kai, knelt slowly next to Lucy. Just doing what Lucy would have done. Xochitl waved off the compliment, though she felt a small sense of pride in receiving a sign of respect from the woman Lucy regarded as a second mother. Not sure I'm comfortable with a feral running loose on the property though. Hannah reached down and touched Lucy's thigh, feeling for broken bones. Kai whimpered. She was injured when we nabbed Travis. Xochitl looked apologetically to Hannah. I didn't know it was this bad. Doesn't surprise me, Hannah said, cradling Lucy's head in her lap. Even as a little girl, she'd go days with a cut or sprained ankle and not let on she was hurt until Ellie noticed. Used to drive her mama crazy. Hannah reached under Lucy's arms, causing Kai to whine. Help me get her into the house. Xochitl found it curious that Hannah didn't seem alarmed at Lucy's high fever. Don't you think we should take her to a hospital? She patted Kai on the back, moving around him to grab Lucy's legs. Not a hospital for miles, and the doc's a drunk. Wouldn't let him near my girl if her life depended on it, Hannah said, matter of fact. She must have noticed Xochitl's concern because she added, which it does not. No, I'll call Dr. Howard. He'll sort her out. Hannah lifted Lucy up by the armpits with amazing ease as Xochitl struggled to get a proper hold on Lucy's limp legs, her body heavy in her unconscious state. Kai, help Lucy. Xochitl grunted and nodded for Kai to move toward the porch. Dr. Howard? Kai smiled and bounded up the stairs to the front door. Does that feral ever stop moving? Hannah looked over her shoulder toward the kennels. Our other boarders are going to have a problem with him. Xochitl gazed up from Lucy's legs to see Kai literally bouncing off the walls, doing backflips as he waited for the women to reach him. So far he only stops when he sleeps. Out cold. The vet, Hannah said, walking backward up the stairs of the wraparound porch. Huh. Xochitl struggled to hold on to Lucy. Shoulda had Kai carry her. Doc Howard's a vet, Hannah replied as she eased Lucy up onto the stoop. What? Xochitl almost dropped Lucy's legs. You're going to call a vet? Of course. Hannah seemed at ease with the idea of an animal doctor treating a human. He's known Lucy all her life, Hannah continued. And who better to cure cat scratch fever than a vet? Hannah chuckled. Xochitl shook her head. Now I know who Lucy gets her bad jokes from. What? Hannah asked as she waited for Kai to stop bouncing around and open the door. Nothing. Xochitl yelled up to Kai. Hey, Hound Chow. Kai stopped and tilted his head to the side as if confused. Door. Xochitl nodded toward the wrought iron screen door. Open. Kai smiled, bounced to the door and threw it open. Easy, Stray. That's handcrafted, Hannah grumbled. He's a bit hyper. Xochitl tried to sound conciliatory. No kidding. Hannah stepped over the threshold into the house. A real special breed, Hannah muttered with contempt. He's good at a lot of things. Xochitl hoped to cast a good light on the squirrely boy, somewhere between fighting off the Vijay boys and listening to the worst nonstop snoring she'd grown attached to the kid. I seem to be doing that a lot lately. Lucy mumbled incoherently as Xochitl and Hannah hoisted her into her childhood home. Off the foyer was a large living room, eclectically decorated with a mix of comfortable stylish furniture and old-world pieces. Beyond the living room, through the dining room was the kitchen, and around the corner and to the right was a long hallway, its walls covered with framed photographs of Lucy in various stages of her life. Huh. No, Dad. One photo in particular caught Xochitl's attention. It was of a beautiful, petite young woman, Lucy's mom, smiling as she held a little red-headed girl. Lucy doesn't look like her mom at all. They passed another door and stopped at the end of the hall. Oh, thank God. Xochitl's arms felt like they were about to fall off. Every muscle screamed, and her body threatened to collapse at any moment. Hannah seemed anxious as she watched Kai sniff his surroundings and pick up various items for closer inspection. Kai, put that down, Xochitl hissed. Open door. With deliberated care, Kai placed a vase back on a decorative side table, skipped over to Hannah and opened the door, gently this time. Kid catches on quick, Xochitl said, overselling the teen word to Hannah like a used car salesman. They followed Kai into the room and eased Lucy onto the bed, resting her head on a down pillow. Hannah walked to the adjacent Jack and Jill bathroom. Xochitl sat on the end of the bed and watched Hannah wet a washcloth before returning to the bedroom. She dabbed at Lucy's forehead with the cloth, continuing down her arm and stopping at the leather cuff around her wrist. Xochitl held her breath as Hannah unbuckled the cuff and slid it off Lucy's arm, exposing the jagged scars hidden underneath. As if they were her own, a flood of emotions rocked Xochitl. Shock turned to horror, which turned into what Xochitl perceived as anger, then as a tear slid down the side of Hannah's face. Xochitl felt overwhelming sadness. Lightheaded and dizzy, she placed a hand on the bed to steady herself. She doesn't talk about it, Xochitl whispered, trying to catch her breath. I think she's ashamed. Hannah turned, her dark curls skimming over her brow, and for the briefest of moments Xochitl thought she saw Hannah's chocolate-colored eyes glow amber. But then it was gone and all that remained was pain. I'm so tired I'm losing it. Hannah placed Lucy's cuff on the side table and lovingly brushed the hair off her face. I'll go call the doc. She patted Lucy lightly and left the room. Xochitl remained seated at the foot of Lucy's bed as Kai, curled up on an overstuffed chair in the corner of the room sound asleep, snored. Going on. Less than fumes, her body was beyond aching. It was numb. Wish I could conk out whenever I wanted. On the nightstand next to the cuff, Xochitl noticed a picture of Lucy as a little girl. She picked it up and studied it. Lucy can't be more than 6 or 7 here. The old black and white photo looked as if it had been hand-painted to add color. On a pier over a lake, Lucy cradled a golden puppy in her arms, the sun shining down on her long copper hair. In the background, out of focus, a woman stood on the porch of a small log cabin. Wonder where this was taken. Lucy, the cabin and the innocence depicted in the picture reminded Xochitl of her own small moment of happiness when her parents would picnic and fish by the lake at Camp Pendleton. Zoki's heart ached. Get a grip, Zoc, she mumbled, shaking off her melancholy as she placed the picture back on the nightstand. She glanced around the cozy room, and it dawned on her that everything in it, all the knickknacks, the figurines of puppies and horses, the wall art of beautiful show dogs and wildlife, belonged to a young girl. Even Lucy's bed, with its white eyelet comforter, was a twin, not a double or a queen or any size befitting a grown woman. The room was a snapshot of Lucy's childhood, her refuge, the place that made her the happiest. Tao, Thandai. Hannah's voice bellowed down the hall into Lucy's room. Come. Xochitl stood as 2 large puppies the color of rust loped into Lucy's room and jumped up, placing their massive paws onto Zoki's chest. Hi, Xochitl said, tilting her head back from the dog's relentless attempts to lick her face. Off. Hannah boomed as she raced into the room, stopping at the doorway. Sit. Her hand pointed to the ground. Tao and Thandai dropped their rumps to the floor and sat looking expectantly up at Xochitl. Damn twin puppies. Hannah sounded out of breath. Always getting out of there. Kennel. She looked down at the pups. Too damn smart for your own good. Puppies. Xochitl looked at the twins and put her arms up in the air. I got nothing for ya. Tao and Thandai's tails slapped at the hardwood floor in response. Doc's on his way, Hannah said and nodded to the bathroom. Your room's on the other side. You can share the washroom with Lucy. Towels underneath the sink. She looked at Kai. Not sure what to do with him. I think he's good there. Xochitl walked toward the bathroom with Tao and Thandai on her heels. Not you too. She put her hand up. Stay. The puppies stopped. Good. Xochitl smiled at the dogs, then looked at Hannah. Thanks, by the way, for taking care of her. Xochitl glanced at Lucy. That's what I was put on this earth to do. Hannah smiled. I'll see about getting some clean clothes for your mutt. That'd be great. Hannah left the room. Tao and Thandai stayed. Great. Xochitl groaned and glowered at the dogs. The twin pups followed her through the bathroom into the adjoining bedroom. She flicked on the light. Clearly the guest bedroom. It was identical to Lucy's except for the plain Furnishings. Only a mirror and a store-bought landscape adorned the walls. The nicest accessory in the room was a handmade quilt of reds and yellows draped over the bed. At least the bed's a double. Beyond exhausted, Xochitl staggered to the bed, plopped down and yanked off her boots. Fine, she said to Tao and Thandi, who stood in front of her patiently waiting. I'm too tired to argue with dogs. Her eyelids drooping, Xochitl sprawled out on the bed, the clicking of claws as the pups circled each other for the best napping place lulled her to sleep. Chapter 20. Major General Ronald M. Davidson recorded personal log. I have assumed command today as of 0600 hours. The initial skirmish was first reported this morning at 0300 hours by Corporal Saunders, who witnessed several Marines housed in his barracks change into what he referred to as werewolves. Sigh. Brigadier General Andrew T. Milton, USMC Camp Pendleton CO, was killed after being afflicted by what I assume can only be the, as of yet, unidentified virus originating in Los Angeles. We lost 34 more Marines to the affliction. All were killed during the 3-hour battle. As of now, 52 Marines are confirmed dead in defense of the base, with approximately another 167 base personnel wounded. Several are still in critical condition. I will expedite my report of the conflict to General Paul H. Hicks, Commandant of the Marine Corps, to ensure that all killed today be granted full honors, and along with their fellow injured Marines, be awarded the Purple Heart in recognition of their sacrifice. Sigh. Today is a sad day for the Corps. And for me. 21 months ago. 3 hours and grande iced coffees later, Xochitl turned off the I-5 freeway onto Harbor Drive toward Camp Pendleton, the first home she had ever known. The Marine base was immediately off the exit, and Xochitl was surprised at how much the main gate entrance had changed. The original 2-lane drive was now 4 lanes, and the old guard shack, as it was affectionately called, had been replaced by 4 guard booths. Huge cement barriers flanked either side of her car, funneling her and all traffic to the 3rd booth. Judging by the squad of Marines stationed at the gate and the enormously high fence that appeared to run the perimeter of the base, security had clearly been beefed. Hi Joel. It's DEFCON 1 around here. An oversized yellow and black sign read caution 100,000 volts. That's new, I think. Xochitl pulled up to the guard booth, and the MP motioned for her to roll down her window. She complied, the salty air feeling good on her face. Hi, I'm here to see Colonel Jones. My name is Xochitl Magaña. Xochitl gave the Marine the sweetest smile she could muster. ID, ma'am. The stoic Marine held out his hand. Okay, I remember these guys being friendlier. Of course I was 5. Xochitl reached for her bag and pulled out her wallet. The only identification she had left was an expired driver's license and an old MCX ID from when she was little. She had lost everything else in the fire that had burned down her bar. I hope he'll be okay with these. With a wide grin, Xochitl handed the cards over to the guard. The Marine meticulously inspected her IDs. Xochitl felt the nervous grin plastered on her face and forced herself to look away from the guard. You know, this license is expired, the Marine said. It is. Xochitl gazed back at the guard, feigning disbelief. By a year. She knew the man wasn't buying her act. I know. I'm sorry. I recently lost everything in a fire and I'm just trying to see my Uncle Vernon Jones. He really is waiting for me. If you could just call the Marine threw up his hand, halting her tirade. Colonel Jones is your uncle. Well, not my actual uncle. He was my father's best friend. He was stationed here. I actually lived here until I was 6. See? Xochitl pointed to the MCX ID. That's me. The guard looked at the little girl on the card and smiled. Cute. But I still can't let you in. Please. If you could just call up to HQ. Xochitl's cell phone buzzed in her pocket. This time she put up her hand to interrupt the guard. Just a sec. The Marine grunted, annoyed. Xochitl knew she was pushing her luck. She pressed her back into the seat, pried the phone out of her skinny jeans and flipped it open. Her uncle's office number was displayed on the caller ID screen. Hi. Xochitl paused to listen to her Uncle Vern on the other end of the call. No. The MP won't let me in. My ID is expired. I know. Okay. She handed her phone to the guard. Here, he wants to talk to you. Hello. The Marine stood at attention when he heard the Colonel on the other end. Even from where she was sitting, Xochitl could hear the deep baritone of her uncle's commanding voice. She leaned her head back against her seat and smiled, knowing the meaning behind that tone. Vern had a way of calmly letting you know you've screwed up and to not do it again. He was never mean, but he was still scary. Sir. Yes, sir. I will, sir, the MP said, his anxious tenor signaling to Xochitl that Vern had made his instructions abundantly clear. She tilted her head toward the guard and grinned. He looks like he's either gonna salute the phone or crap his pants. She knew the man was just doing his job, but she still found herself having to stifle a giggle. The guard hung up the phone and handed it and the IDs back to Xochitl. You can go on ahead. Great. Thanks so much. Xochitl gave the MP an I feel your pain being there. Myself look. Not that it'll do much good. Without another word, the Marine stepped back from her car and waved her through the gate. Xochitl gave the MP a slight nod and drove onto the base for the first time in 22 years. Xochitl gazed out the window of the Tornado, amazed as she drove along Vandergrift Boulevard toward headquarters. The dry desert-like terrain was about the only thing on base that looked the same as when she was little. By the main gate she passed a new hospital under construction, though the project seemed to have been abandoned. Guest defense against KV took priority. Many more housing communities had been erected on base since Xochitl had lived. Their newer Spanish-style homes that reminded her more of mini suburbs than military lodging. O'Neill Heights, set in the hills behind the old hospital, had been her home until her papa had moved her to Los Angeles. Xochitl had loved living on base as a child. She'd felt safe. There had been lots of kids to play with, and on really warm days her parents had taken her boating on Lake O'Neill. Xochitl had loved being on the water with her papa. He taught me how to fish on that lake. Well, he'd do the fishing while I tried to save the worms from his hook. Aye, Mija, you're wasting the bait, her papa would chide. But papa, I'm saving them, she would reply. Her father would just chuckle, pat her head and eventually give up on fishing. Papa liked the idea of fishing more than the actual fishing. Xochitl's mom would always have a Kentucky Fried Chicken picnic waiting for them on shore. Huh. Haven't been on the water since living here. Haven't had KFC either. KFC. Xochitl's stomach rumbled. As she approached the Mainside Center, the hub for base activity, her mind moved away from thoughts of food and filled with memories of her mother. Alice Magaña had the brightest blue eyes that would instantly light up at the sight of Xochitl's papa, Carlos. To Xochitl, her mom was the prettiest lady on base, especially when she smiled. She had flaxen hair and fair skin that complemented Xochitl's father's black hair and brown skin. They had been the most striking couple, like movie stars. And when she and her mom would go shopping at the MCX or the commissary, people would often comment how much Xochitl resembled her mother. Her mom would reply, oh, she does. But she's more like her papa. Wise and strong. 5. Going on 30. Then she'd laugh. Xochitl loved her mother's laugh and how, when her papa really got her going, it would start at the center of her belly and crescendo in an explosion of sound. That increased until no sound came out. Only the shaking of her body revealed she was still laughing. Her parents had entertained often when the men were home. Her papa and uncle Vern would light up the barbecue, and all the families in the neighborhood would come over for hot dogs and hamburgers. The celebrations got so big that they would spill out onto the streets, transforming into block parties that would last well into the night. As the beer flowed, the moms would gather to gossip or talk about base life. Xochitl liked to sit on her mom's lap and listen as she spoke about how glad she was to finally be in a real home that didn't share walls with anyone else. The other moms always had nodded in agreement, like they were bonding over the shared experience. The women would exchange decorating tips and laugh about how their husbands complained that they had bought another pillow or throw blanket. Xochitl recalled how her mother would spend hours rearranging the furniture or painting walls. Looking back on those days, it occurred to Xochitl that her papa had always been away when her mom went into fix-up mode, as he called it. She was just filling her days, keeping her mind off papa and whatever danger he was in. Xochitl's mother had been a brave woman, brave and loving until her end. Xochitl shuddered at the memory of her mom in the hospital, lying on a bed with tubes running in and out of her. Xochitl had been 6 and too young to stay with her. Instead, she'd spent most of her time with Vern or next door with her Mom's friend Janice. Alice Magaña had passed during the night, succumbing to breast cancer without Xochitl ever having gotten to say a real goodbye. Tears flowed down Zoki's face. She looked into the rearview mirror. Her eyes were bloodshot and her nose was runny. Great. Enough, Xochitl. She wiped her face with the sleeve of her jacket and sat up straight. A few minutes later, she pulled up in front of Marine Corps Base headquarters. She thought it odd since Vern usually worked for the Major General in the 1st Marine Division headquarters. She chalked it up like most things now to Werebeasts. Xochitl stepped out of El Gallo as a tall, bald African-American man dressed in tan fatigues with his cap tucked under his arm, exited the HQ building. She smiled and waved to her Uncle Vern. Hey baby girl. Vern strode across the street and threw his arms around Xochitl, squeezing her tight to his chest. Ow! She sucked in a breath, wincing in her uncle's bear hug. Oh sorry. Vern pulled away from Zoki, holding her at arm's length. Did I hurt you? No. I'm okay. Just a bit beat up still. At only 5 feet 5 inches in height to Vern's 6 feet 2 inches, Zoki had to stretch her neck back to look up at him. She felt incredibly tiny next to her uncle. Vern eyed her up and down, stopping on the bandage still protecting her healing right shoulder. Uncomfortable, Zoki shifted her weight from foot to foot and waited for the inspection to end. You look good, considering a Werebeast bit you. Yeah, bites are becoming all the rage now in LA. She brushed her hand over the raised pink scar on her forearm. How do I tell him it was Miguel? Vern raised an eyebrow. Xochitl opened the car door. At least we know the whole getting bit and turning into a werewolf during the full moon is bull. I haven't had the slightest urge to go furry. Good to know. Vern walked around the Tornado to the passenger side. Nice ride, by the way. You like a Lavana white? Zoki waved the back of her hand across the top of the car. I'm going old school these days. She slid in behind the wheel, leaned across the front seat and unlocked the passenger door. Vern ducked in and settled beside her. So where are you living these days? Xochitl revved El Gallo. We're not going to the barracks. We're off base for this one. Okay. Xochitl gave her Uncle Vern a sideways glance and pulled onto the road, headed for the San Luis Rey. Chapter 21. Hey little kiddies. Kyon is back. It's been a while. And that's a fact. Had to move. Was being tracked. Beasties huffin' puffin'. Wanna blow my house down. But I won't give in. I'll stand my ground. So here's today's lesson. Better listen up well. They've hacked the code. Rewritten the cell. The monsters are here. They're under your bed. Don't step in the lava, or you'll be dead. So run, little kitties. You failed the test. Tell all your friends. I'll tell all the rest. And always remember, Kyon knows best. The familiar scent of night-blooming jasmine drifted in through the open window. Lucy knew she was home in her own bed. Her jersey cotton sheets felt cool against her hot skin. In the darkness she couldn't make out the color of the bedding, but remembered that Mama had always purchased white sheets. They bleach better, Lucy, Mama had said when little Lucy had begged for sheets with colors or patterns. Little girls who sleep with dogs need sheets that can be bleached. Lucy could still hear her Mama's voice. She smiled as exhaustion lured her deeper into transient sleep. Lucy looks up at the blazing stars overhead. She feels warm. The heat of the stars burns like 1,000 suns. She looks down at the scorched earth at her feet. Brown and black dirt, a river of dried mud below her. She takes a step and sinks into the sand dunes all the way to her hips. Her eyes see the ocean. Almost sunrise, the darkness takes on a blue shimmer. It won't be long now. A big hole gapes in her heart. Dirt on form. Dirt on face. Sorrow overwhelms. Time and space. She closes her eyes and sees flames. Are you sure about Travis? Vern's voice crackled through Zoki's earbuds as she reclined on the overstuffed living room sofa, sandwiched between Tao and Thandy. A perfect napping spot. The deep inset couch had become her and, subsequently the pups, favorite place in the house. For days had passed since she, battered and bruised and Lucy delirious with fever, had arrived on Hannah's doorstep, Kai in tow. Lucy's Empyrean home was tranquil, idyllic even. Nonetheless, Xochitl was growing increasingly uncomfortable hanging around the unfamiliar surroundings with the woman who was neither fond of her nor the stray she and Lucy had adopted. Yeah. Xochitl replied and lightly rubbed the purplish-black welt on her arm, which matched her now less swollen black eye. Travis never changed back. Vern, I'm frightened. For Miguel. Yes, Xochitl said, mindlessly stroking the female ridgeback's head as had become their habit. This war-fighting business. If he keeps changing. Xochitl's throat constricted, and she coughed to clear it. What if Miguel stays a werebeast forever? What happened to Travis doesn't have to happen to Miguel, Vern said. But we can't know that for sure. Xochitl gazed out the window and watched the shadows form on the gravel. It'll be evening soon. We do know the Kyon virus doesn't affect everyone the same way, Vern replied. We've seen it. This Kyon nose guy seems to think the wereflu isn't a virus at all. Bob's lab geeks came up with a similar conclusion. Xochitl needed to grasp at any theory, even one by a kook like Kyon knows. She needed to make sense of the world again. Bob said he told you what he found out before Ames took it all. I read what he gave me. Vern sounded guarded. And I didn't give him everything I had the night we sprung Miguel. Now, before you say anything, hear me out, Xochitl. Fine. Xochitl pinched the bridge of her nose. I gave Bob most of the intel, but I sensed he had another agenda, and I couldn't risk Miguel or you to whatever that might be. So I held on to a few things. Asked some connections to run what I gave Bob and what I kept from him. What did your connections find out? Similar to what Bob's people concluded, but there is a viral element. I'm still waiting to hear what that's all about. Vern paused. Xochitl, this thing is big, but no one knows who's behind it or what the agenda is. We know Ames took the laptop, which means Washington has it. From the chatter I'm hearing, they want to figure out a way to use it. Xochitl felt a wave of nausea hit her. So what now? Keep working with Lucy. Vern yelled over the thwopping of helicopter blades. How's she doing? In and out, but mainly still unconscious, Xochitl whisper shouted, trying to speak loud enough for Vern without disturbing Hannah and Dr. Howard. Doc's checking on her right now. Best not tell Vern the doctor is a veterinarian. Don't worry, Vern shouted. Xochitl hissed, momentarily tugging the headphones away from her ear. She'll be fine. You two will be back in business in no time. I'll keep poking around on my end. Maybe we'll figure a way out of this mess. Xochitl heard loud popping noises like gunfire in the background. Where are you? On the... Vern's voice started to break up. Great Wall of Mexico. Coyotes. Running or through an ground pipeline. Amazing thin wall. Up so fast. Well, my people did build pyramids. A little wall's nothing. Ha! But so, head back on our side. Okay, watch your 6. Eyes do, bye grr, Vern's voice cut off. Lucy kneels on the forest floor. Her hands on the bark of the tallest tree. It is time, she knows. Lowering her body to the ground, she crawls on her belly over hard earth and sharp stones. Her hands and arms ache. Cuts draw blood, but she creeps ever forward. The call drives her on and on. She rolls behind a tree, looking into the vale below. She smells a campfire. Mama and the sweet golden retriever puppy Lucy loves. Biscuits. They are sitting by the fire. Lucy smells the melting sugar of the marshmallows. Mama makes the best esmeralda. Biscuits chews on a bone bigger than his head. The happy little blonde pup settles next to Mama. Lucy wants to run to them, but a jagged hand reaches out and grabs her ankle, wounding her again. She can't run. She can't scream. Chapter 22. To-do list. 1. Recruit Morales. Remember to send cigarettes. 2. Make contact with Vern Jones. 3. Requisition computer at Langley. 4. Meet the girlfriend. 5. Buy milk. 21 months ago. About 35 miles north of Oceanside, on the El Camino Real sat Jasper's, a rundown watering hole. As Xochitl and Vern parked El Gallo, she eyed the chipped blue and brown paint of the salt-weathered building. The small bar reminded her of a scuttled skiff. Other than the Tornado, only a couple of Harleys and a 4x4 truck were stationed along the dust-laden strip of road. Nice place, Xochitl said. Yeah, it's a fine establishment, Vern uttered sarcastically. The crunching sound of gravel scratching beneath her shoes, like bone scraping against bone, sent a shudder through Xochitl's body. The memory of being stuffed in the trunk of a car and nearly beaten to death flashed in her mind. You okay, baby girl? Vern placed a hand on her back and escorted her up the path toward Jasper's. Yeah, fine, Xochitl's stomach churned. There food in this joint? Not sure you'd call it food, but you can eat here. So long as it's fried, I'm good. Xochitl brushed a stray hair away from her face. Your buddies meeting us here? Yeah, just past their truck. So not a hot spot then? That's the point. Xochitl followed Vern up the steps and into the bar. The inside of Jasper's was about what Xochitl had expected, bar counter on the right with taps of Coors, Bud, Miller, the basics and booze on the shelves. Behind it, the barkeep, an average-sized man with a paunch, wiped the counter with a towel. Upon seeing Vern, he slung the rag over his shoulder, leaned against the bar and nodded toward the back where floor-to-ceiling sliding glass doors opened up to a breathtaking view of blue ocean. The orange sunset spilled through the transparent wall, adding warmth and expanse to what otherwise would have been a cramped, dingy space. The aroma of stale beer and fried food wafted through the air. Wooden tables and chairs were placed haphazardly about the center of the bar, and 2 booths lined a section of the back wall. The doors led out to a deck which looked as weathered as the rest of the exterior. Along the low railing 3 men sat around 2 tables that had been pulled together to create one large one. The youngest man turned his head toward them and smiled, raising his beer bottle in a salute. Vern acknowledged the men with a slight nod. Jasper, 2 of the usual. He walked out to the deck with Xochitl on his heels. I hope the usual involves food, Xochitl mumbled as they approached the men. Bob. Vern slapped one of the men on the back and shook the youngest man's hand. Oh, that guy's only got one arm. Lefty. How the hell are ya? Vern. Xochitl yelled, surprised by her uncle's insensitivity. All 4 men turned to Xochitl and began laughing. Good to see you, sir. The man called Lefty stood still, chuckling. What the hell's so funny? Xochitl put her hands on her hips. Zoc. Vern threw an arm around Lefty's shoulders. This is private first class Pedro Delgado. Lefty, PFC Delgado interrupted. On account I'm a southpaw. Good thing too. Because. He gestured to his missing right arm and burst out laughing again. The men were in hysterics. Marines. Xochitl rolled her eyes and pulled up a seat. The man her uncle had called. Bob jumped up and offered her his chair. Ma'am. Bob smiled at Xochitl. I'm not your grandma. Name's Xochitl. I like her, Vern, Bob said. She's one of a kind for sure, Vern replied and sat down next to Lefty. Xochitl leaned back in her chair, crossed her arms and inspected Vern's recruits. Average in height and well-muscled, Bob appeared to be close to his mid-60s. With a buzz-cut and clean-shaved face, Bob was impeccably dressed in Armani fancy suit, ex-military, probably a merc. Pedro Lefty Delgado was another story. He wore a faded, desert camo jacket, 2 sizes too big for him, the right sleeve pinned up. A lanky Mexican kid. Lefty had a distant look in his eyes despite his smile. Xochitl knew that look. It was the look she'd seen in the mirror, the look of someone who'd been through hell and had come out the other end. Lefty caught Xochitl staring at him. She quickly shifted her gaze to the man sitting directly across from Vern. The man hadn't said a word, and if he hadn't been sitting right in front of her, Xochitl wouldn't have noticed him. So Vern, I know Bob here and Lefty. Who's this gentleman? She nodded to the 3rd man. Right. Introductions. Vern sat back in his chair. As you said, Zoc, this is Robert Tanner. Bob. Bob Tanner smiled at Xochitl. And Lefty, of course, Vern continued. And this is John Ames. Jack and I go back a ways. John Ames was an average-looking mid-to-late 40s white male. There was nothing distinctive about him. He just was, and that made Xochitl uneasy. He's either a serial killer or CIA. Probably both. Xochitl noticed a subtle exchange between her Uncle Vern and Ames. She had the feeling that the word classified defined the relationship between the 2 men. She thought it odd that men so varied in age could have worked so closely together. She was about to ask when Jasper came out with a tray of burgers, fries and beers. Without ceremony, he set the tray on the end of the table and left. The smell of grilled meat was heaven to Xochitl, and she took in a deep breath and sighed with happiness. Dig in. Vern motioned to the group to serve themselves. Xochitl grabbed a burger from the tray and sunk her teeth into the warm bun. Holy crap. Oh my god, this is amazing. her words mushed between bites of burger. Once again, Xochitl had Bob and Lefty rolling with laughter. This time she didn't care. All she wanted was food. Slow down, girl. Vern laughed and tried to grab her burger. Xochitl swatted Vern's hand, turning her burger protectively away from him. Get your own, old man. Old man? She sure got your number, Vern, Bob said and grabbed his own burger. Here. Lefty passed Xochitl a beer. Thanks. Not looking up from her food, she took the beer and set it aside to finish the last couple of bites. When she was done, Xochitl raised her head up from the empty burger tray and saw 4 pairs of eyes staring at her in astonishment. What? I'm hungry. We gathered, Bob replied. Vern, don't you feed this girl? She could eat us all under the table, Vern teased. On cue, Xochitl reached across the table, grabbed a fry from Vern's tray, stuffed it in her mouth and smiled. She took a sip of her beer and leaned back in her chair, content. So Vern, John Ames broke in, I've got the information you wanted. Why don't you tell everyone what we're here for, besides the great hamburgers? Xochitl stiffened. She wanted to know Vern's plan, but she didn't like the way Ames spoke to him. Something's up with this guy. I don't like him knowing about Miguel. She caught Vern's eye before he answered. By the look he gave her, Xochitl knew Vern was all business now. Right, let's get down to it. Vern pulled himself up straight and moved the empty trays off to the side. As you all know, I asked you here as a personal favor. Bob, you served with Xochitl's father and me during our later days in Nam. Bob gave a terse nod. You did. Xochitl leaned in. Though I knew all of Papa's friends. Yep, Bob said. On his second tour and the toughest Marine I'd ever met. Was sorry to hear of his passing. Too young. What was it he used to call you? Vern. El Novato. Vern and Xochitl replied in unison. They looked at each other, the memory of her papa both fond and melancholy. That's it. Bob chuckled. You let him get away with that, sir? Lefty asked, almost choking on his drink. I didn't know what he meant. Vern pointed his bottle at Bob. And it sounded cooler than cherry, which I know you called me behind my back. Ha! Bob cackled. Hell I was. Vern laughed. But Carlito could have called me anything. Save my skin more than once back in those days. Bob gazed down at his beer, seemingly lost in thought. To Carlito. Vern raised his beer in salute. To Carlito. Bob clinked his beer to Vern's and took a long swig. Xochitl couldn't believe she was sitting next to another one of her father's Vietnam buddies. Until 5 minutes ago, Vern had been the only man she still knew from her papa's service days. Her papa had never spoken of his time in combat but had talked often about the men who'd served with him. He never mentioned Bob. Her papa had been drafted at 18. He had served under Vern, his LT, and had returned home with a Bronze Star she'd seen only once. Never knew why he got it. By the time Xochitl had come along, her father was a gunnery sergeant. Gunny to his men. Then her mother had died, and Xochitl's father had left the Marines, moving her to Los Angeles. Uncle Vern had been reassigned to D.C. Sometime later. When Vern returned, he was a colonel stationed at Camp Pendleton, and her father was dying. Xochitl felt something nudge her side and looked down to see Lefty's elbow at her ribs. Zoc? Vern asked. Huh. Xochitl saw Vern looking expectantly at her. I was asking you to tell Ames about the black trucks and what the neighborhood people told you, Vern prompted. Ames sat in his chair, hands folded over a file that rested on the table. Xochitl did not like this man and didn't want to tell him any more than necessary. Wary of Ames, Xochitl looked to Vern. He smiled the smile he always gave her. When she was unsure or frightened, Vern wanted her to trust his judgment. I do. I just don't trust Ames. How about if I start, Ms. Magaña? Ames asked curtly. Xochitl, right? His patronizing tone startled Xochitl and reminded her of Memo. She glared at the man, trying to figure out his angle. Just stay cool, Zoc. Don't give him any ammunition. You were having an affair with gun trafficker Guillermo Morales. Is that correct? Ames asked, an arrogant smirk on his face. He's trying to goad you. Don't bite, Xochitl. She bit her tongue instead and nodded. And he was, unbeknownst to you, expanding his operation by stealing kids from the neighborhood. Ames didn't wait for Xochitl to answer. Hijo de puta. He used your brother. That's how you got that little souvenir. Ames pointed to the bandage on Xochitl's shoulder. His smile broadened. Vern's head snapped around, and he stared at her with angry disbelief. Rapid murmur skirted her consciousness, but all Xochitl heard was Memo's rabid command, Matila, as it clawed its way through her brain, shredding her. Control. Don't you fucking talk about my brother, Pendejo. Xochitl shot out of her seat. Her chair crashed on the deck. Fucking great, Xochitl. That's why we're here, isn't it? Ames leaned in, looking pleased with himself. You want to find your little lost Werebeast brother, and I know where he is. Jack. That's enough. Vern pounded his fist on the wooded table. What did you tell him? Xochitl reared on Vern. She felt betrayed. What he needed to know to get us the information we need. Vern spat out between clenched teeth. You should try it sometime. Vern. Bob tried to pacify his friend. Go easy on her. Tears welled in Xochitl's eyes and she looked away. I should have told him. Vern sunk back in his seat, deflated. Xochitl clamped down on her shame. She didn't want to give Ames the satisfaction of seeing her cry. He'd like it, just like Memo liked it. She placed her hand hesitantly atop Vern's. After a moment he laced his fingers through hers. She leaned in and whispered, I don't need him or his information. I'll find Miguel myself. Xochitl, we have no choice. Vern's grip tightened. You want Miguel? The look in his eyes gave away his mistrust of Ames. Yes. Then this is how we do it. Vern cupped her face. Mija for Miguel. Xochitl nodded and leaned down to pick up the chair, but Lefty beat her to it, setting it upright. She sat down and took a deep breath. Exhaling, she looked directly at Ames. Mr. Ames, listen to me very clearly. I will tell you what I know from the neighborhood, but if I ever find out you screwed me or my family over in any way, I will hunt you down and kill you. You understand? Ames just smiled smugly. Man, I love this girl. Bob chuckled. Out of the corner of her eye, Xochitl saw Vern shake his head slightly at Bob, as if to say, not now. Memo. She corrected herself. Guillermo, that is, took the afflicted from the neighborhood, yes. He would get their families to consent because military types were hauling them off in trucks. The people were scared. They didn't know Memo was using them for his own end. He was slowly taking over not just the neighborhood but all of East Los Angeles. Xochitl paused. She remembered the warehouse room, the smell of urine and vomit, the cage she'd been locked in for days. Go on, Ames said. All I know is, she continued, Memo's operation was growing until Officer Lowell saved me and arrested him, and the catchers are military-run and no one knows where they take the wurs. Xochitl sat back in her chair, exhausted. She watched Ames mull over her story. This is what I have so far. Ames picked up the file and handed it to Vern. Xochitl sat up as Vern took the file and studied it for what felt like an eternity. Vern's brow furrowed. What? You're killing me, Vern. Well, damn it. Bob slammed his beer down, breaking the silence. What the hell's going on? Vern looked to Xochitl, then to Bob. It seems there are former animal shelters. Pounds, Ames interjected. Yes, pounds. Vern shot Ames a cold look that sent shivers down Xochitl's spine. Miguel. These facilities house anywhere from 10 to 50 Werebeasts, Vern continued. They've been retrofitted to handle larger animals, Ames added. They're not animals, you dick. They're people. Xochitl stuck out her hand for the file. We have intel, Ames said, that some facilities are not sanctioned by the government and might be privately funded and operated. If we is who I think we is, then why didn't we know about these privately funded pounds? Bob asked Ames. Because we didn't even know about the government pounds or what the government was doing with these people, Vern stated. Wait. What? Xochitl's head shot up. How could you not know? Vern zeroed in on Ames. You're here gathering information, seeing what to make of the situation and how to best utilize it. You're using us. Colonel Jones, you might want to think about what you say next, Ames said. Xochitl watched their exchange intently. She couldn't make out what was going on between the two men, but she knew if Vern didn't do what Ames wanted, she'd never see Miguel again. It says here, Xochitl said, trying to get the group back on track, that my brother is in one of these places, but it doesn't say which one. She handed the file back to Vern. No, it doesn't. Ames eyed Vern. Do we have a deal? Deal. Vern. Xochitl stared at her uncle. We have a deal. Vern's focus never wavered from Ames. Now where is he? He's in a pound in Fontana. Ames pulled a piece of paper from inside his jacket and handed it to Vern. Here's the address. Vern glanced at the paper and passed it to Bob. I'll send this to my guys. Bob pulled out his cell phone and began texting. The address. Vern gulped his beer. What guys? Xochitl twisted hard on her rings. They made plans without me? I hate that. I've got a couple of my men in on the job. Thought we'd need some backup. Bob replied. Appreciated. Vern patted Xochitl's hand. One more thing. Ames held up a small case. This the kid? He nodded to Lefty and handed it to Vern. Yes. Vern tucked the case under his arm. We're done here. Vern and Ames scooted their chairs away from the table and got up. Xochitl sat dumbfounded. What did I just miss? Lefty and Bob also looked confused. Neither man got up. Wait. That's it. Xochitl asked. He's just gonna leave? We got what we needed, Xochitl. Vern's tone told her he'd explain later. Fine, Xochitl mumbled. I wonder what Ames is getting out of this? Outside of Jasper's Xochitl, Lefty and Bob watched her Uncle Vern and John. Ames walked down the road away from the bar. The men were discussing something she knew had to do with her and Miguel. A myriad of questions swarmed in her mind. This doesn't feel right. What does Ames really want? What's the government up to? What deal did Vern make with Ames? Fucking spooks. Bob spat out under his breath. Xochitl stared bug-eyed at Bob. What? Bob asked. No good assholes. Fucked us real good in Nam. He threw an arm around Xochitl, giving her a little squeeze. Don't you worry, kiddo. We got your six. Damn right. Lefty grabbed Xochitl's hand, holding it tight. Standing there, between Bob and Lefty, Xochitl understood for the first time why her papa had called the men in the Corps his